Hello, today we will learn how to save and export configurator options to the external file and load them back into the application. Also, we will add an additional panel to our application, which will let us name the external file with our configurator data and buttons Save and Load. So let's start right away, and first let's add another tab and call it Save Loads. And first we need to create the main panel, which will contain all our new elements. I will add all needed elements right away and call it Save Loads Panel. The class for the panel will be called the same. And same for the element. Let's grab the puzzle with parameters. The width will be 160 pixels and height 65 pixels. Let's press play, and here we have the panel. Now let's position it correctly. For that, let's add bottom property. So we will align it to bottom. Then let's add margin bottom parameter, so we can center it correctly. And the parameter right, because we will also align it to the right side of the screen. So the right will be set to 10, bottom to 50%, and margin bottom to -200 pixels. Yes, it is not exactly in the center, but it is better to set it this way, so it will always be under the info panel. Alright, let's save it and test in the application. And here we go, new panel is now aligned. Next, let's create input field, which will let us set the name for the file that we will be saving. So again, first let's add div element, puzzle set property, create CSS rule, and here let's place the puzzle with parameters. We will need not div but input element, so we will be able to input some text. And let's call it save input. Let's call the class the same and paste this name everywhere we need, just like we did previously. The position will be static because it will be added inside of this element. And here let's also type in Save Loads Panel, so it will be added inside of already created panel. The width will be 152 pixels. It is a bit smaller than the width of this panel, but it still will take all the place from one edge to another. It is so because the element's input already has some borders built in. It is indentation inwards, so the text will have some space from the border, and also a spatial border. So 152 pixels plus 8 pixels of these extra borders will give us 160 pixels width. Then the height will be 25 pixels. Let's save and check, and here we go, now we have our input. Now let's give it white background. Next, let's set up its appearance. First, let's make the borders round. We need border radius for it. And 4 pixels. Then let's fix a border itself a little bit. It looks a little bit too thick. By default it is set to 2 pixels, So let's type in solid, 1 pixel and black. Let's save and check how it looks, and looks much better. Next, let's add a shadow. We need the parameter box shadow, horizontal and vertical shift 0 pixels, blur 4 pixels, and the color gray. And here we go. Also, let's add transparency for our main panel. So, background's color needs to be set to transparent. And nice, now we only see the input field. Next, let's set the specific parameters of the inputs element. Let's copy set property style and make sure that it is set to text, as it is by default. Next, let's add some text information, which will always be in these elements by default. For the value field, let's type in my configuration. So it will be the default suggested name for the file that the user will be saving, and we will not have just an empty line. Next, we need to add the buttons, which will save and load the file. Let's add two div elements right away for both buttons. The first will be called Save button, and the second Loads button. Let's add it inside Save Loads panel and create the style for them. The style will be called Save Loads buttons. It will be set for both buttons because they look similar. Now, using the sets property puzzle, let's set class name for it. Let's copy it from here, don't forget to delete the dot, and we need to apply it for both elements at the same time. For Save button and for Loads button. Now let's add a puzzle with style parameters. The position needs to be static. Background's color will be orange. The width of the buttons will be 70 pixels and height 25. Let's save and check. Now I have two buttons added, but one is on top of another. Let's add another parameter called float. It will tell the buttons how they need to group. We need to set them to the left, so they will be aligned by the left border for each other and previous element. Also, let's add them some margin, so they will have some space between them. Let's just type in 5 pixels, and on each side of each button we will have 5 pixels of space. Now let's make the buttons more visually pleasing by adding the border radius to round the edges. Also, let's add cursor parameter and set it to pointer. This parameter will change the mouse cursor when we hover over the elements. Let's save and check. Now when the cursor is changing, it is obvious that the elements can be clicked. Also, as always, let's add some shadow, so the buttons will be more pronounced. Vertical and horizontal shift, 0 pixels and 0 pixels, 4 pixels blur and color gray. Let's save, and now our buttons are almost ready. Now we only need to add some text, so it will be clear which button does what. So again, let's grab set property puzzle, and here we need the parameter inner HTML, so some text inside of this element. For the first element, let's type in load, and for the second, save. So it will be inner text for the element save button. Let's check, and we now have the text. Now we need to set it up. First, let's change its color. For that we need color parameter. Let's just make it white. Alright, better. Next, let's assign a font using the font family parameter. We will be using same font from previous tutorials, Oswald. Let's check, even better. Next, let's align the text to center. Using the parameter text align. Let's select center. Alright, looking good. And also, let's make the fonts a bit thicker. For that, we need to use font weight parameter. Then, let's just type in bold. Alright, let's save and check. And here we go. Now everything looks good. Now, as we have set up the interface, let's actually add the possibility to save the configuration to the file on disk. First, let's add on event of click for the element save button. So when we press on save button, everything inside this puzzle will start working. Next, let's add a variable which we will call data to save. In this variable, we will collect all the needed data, which we will then save to the file. By default, it will be an empty list, and we will be adding all the data, all the parameters to this list. Between these parameters will be a comma, and then we will save this list to the file. It will be a convenient and optimized way to do so, because we don't have many parameters. So let's add here set variable puzzle with data to save selected. And inside this variable, let's place the create list with puzzle. First, let's save the measurements. These are height, width and depth of the cabinet. We will get this data right from the inputs, because the inputs will always correspond with real measurements. So let's add the puzzle gets property, and here we need to select value. First we will take the width, so we will need the parameter W size. Then we will write the height, so we will need the parameter H size. And then comes depth, so we will need D size. Alright, first 3 pieces of data are ready, and now we need to get the materials parameters. The first element is our value. It is the switch between the color and wooden texture. So we will need the puzzle getValue. We will get it from the material table mat. And the name of the value is switcher. Next, we will need to get the color, and we will be saving the color separately by each channel, as we have previously done under the color tab, using this procedure. So we will be saving the color just the same way. Each channel separately, red channel, green channel and blue channel. So let's grab the puzzle getColor, material table mats and node RGB. First we'll go red, then green, and then blue. We need to do it exactly this way, so later when we load the saved configuration, the color will also be animated. Next, we need to save the elements that are visible on a scene, because we need to know if in our current saved configuration we have doors or the sliding door or the shelves or nothing at all, just the plain default cabinet. And we will do it just the same way as we have done previously for this info panel. So let's add cycle here. Then let's copy this puzzle and place it in the same slot. So we will also go through this list of elements, and if they are visible, they will be added to data that we save. For that, we will use a puzzle inListSet. Let's place it here. Then here, let's place the variable which contains our list, data to save. Into the last input, we need to place the element which we want to save. So the cycle will run through all these elements, and if it is visible, it will be saved to this list. We will be adding visible elements not by some set index, because we don't have one, but just to the end of the list. So here let's select last. And we need not to set it as the last elements, but to save as new last element. So the new elements will be added as the new last element. If we leave it as set, it will just change the last element that we have now. For example, if we have 5 elements in a list, the new element will always be added as 5th element. But if we use insert adds, it will create a new 6th element. In our case, that is what we need, because we don't know the exact counts of all the visible elements, and the number of elements will be always changing. Alright, now our setup is ready. Now we just need to save it to the file. For that, we will need the puzzle downloads file. Let's place it here. Let's add it to the bottom. So basically, when we gathered all our data, we will save it all to the file. Also, we need to name the file. We will take it from these inputs, where the user types in the name of the file. For that, we will need getPropertyPuzzle, and we will be getting value parameter. From the input, save input. And at the end, we need to add the extension of the file. Let's add a dot and then JSON. And as I copied the puzzle from info panel, we need to change I variable to J variable. Alright, let's check how it works. Let's set up our cabinets a little bit, change some things, change the color and save the file. Let's press save and check what we actually saved. So inside the file, first 3 parameters are width, height and depth. Then we have the value parameter or our switcher that switches between the wooden texture and the color. And then we have values for 3 channels, red, green and blue, which together create the color. And in the end there is a list of objects which are visible on a scene. In this case nothing was selected, so we have the default list of objects: box, legs and shelf. Let's test it a bit more and add some more changes. For example, let's add doors and change the color. Now let's save it with index 2. Alright, now we have different values. We have different width, height and depth, different color values, and also 2 more elements were added: right door and left door. Alright, everything works. Now let's add a possibility to load the saved configuration back to the application. First, we will need the puzzle on event of click, which will be waiting for a click on load button. Next, we will need another special puzzle, which is called open file, which will launch the select file dialog window. Also, we will need the puzzle open file data. We need to plug it into the puzzle loads data. It will read all the data from the file and then submit it for processing. Alright, let's save and check how it works. Let's press load button, and here is dialog window with our configuration files. We can press open, but nothing will happen, because we also need to process loaded data. For that we will need another variable, which we will call loaded data. Let's place it here, and this variable will also be the list, so let's create an empty list right away. Now, with this variable, we will be submitting the data that was loaded for processing. For that, we will need loaded data puzzle, and we will plug it here. So now all the data needed will be inside this variable, and we will take it from here. So first of all, let's get the measurements of the cabinet. To do it, we need to change a bit puzzle setup under the size tab. This whole setup, which we use to change the inputs parameters, needs to be placed to the new procedure. So let's create a new procedure, place it here, and then place this whole setup into the procedure. And let's change it a bit. We need to add a new variable, and let's call it new width. Now let's place this variable instead of the puzzle getProperty value, which reads the data from the input W size. We also need to change this puzzle to the variable in few more places. Now here into the puzzle on event of change, we will place our new procedure. Also let's plug in getProperty value. Let's rename the procedure and call it change W size. Now we will be using the same procedure inside of the Save and Loads tab. Let's grab the procedure, place it here after the data is loaded, and new width will be read directly from the loaded file. For that we need the puzzle. in list get and the variable loaded data. So we know that width is contained in the first value from this list, because it was saved the first. So I will need to get the index 0, which is basically the first element from the list. Let's save and check how it works. Let's press load, select the file, and here we go, the width has changed, but it haven't changed here. So we will also need to load the new width from the file into this input. So let's do it. Let's grab the puzzle sets property and select value. For the elements W size. Then let's grab the inList get puzzle and place it here. Let's save and see how it works. Again, let's load our configuration. And now the width changed both on the object and in the input. Info panel recalculates everything properly, because here on the bottom we have the procedure recalculates model size. Now we need to do the same for other measurements of the cabinet. So let's add new procedure. Next measurement will be height. Let's call it change H size. Then we need new variable, new height, and place this variable instead of the gets property value puzzles. Get property value grabs the data directly from the input, and now it will get the data from our new variable. The procedure goes here, and gets property value goes into the procedure. And let's do the same for the depth. Let's create new procedure, call it change D size, and place everything inside it. Then let's add the variable and call it new depth. Put away get property value and place our new variable instead of it. And again, let's do the same for other gets property value puzzles. Then let's place our new procedure here. It will work just the same. The logic here works like this. The variable new depth, thanks to getPropertyValue, gets the value from the D size and then recalculates it here. And here in the safe load, we will get the data from the loaded file. Alright, let's place here our new procedures. The second value in the list is height, so we will need the procedure change H size. Also, let's copy inList puzzle and set the index 1. Also the same for the input. Instead of W size, let's type in H size. And the index here also will be 1. Okay, done. Next is depth. So we will do the same for D size. Depth measurement is third value in our list, so the index for it will be 2. Alright, everything is done. Let's save and check. Let's load our previously saved configuration. And everything is working. The cabinet changed its measurements and the inputs also were recalculated. And that's exactly what we wanted. The measurements are working, now we need to change the color. We already have added everything in the procedure under the Color tab. So everything we need is to use this procedure here. We just need to give it data from the file using the puzzle in list get. Let's check the setup. Next we have the parameter value or our switcher. So let's place it here and it will have index 3. Index 4 is the red channel of the color. Index 5 is green channel. And index 6 is blue. We can count it all here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Alright, let's save and check how it works. Let's try second configuration. And everything loaded correctly. It is pink, just like we saved in our second configuration. Now all left to do is to add the possibility to load the extra elements, doors, drawers, etc. For that we will use the same method that we have used when we were saving them, by using the cycle. Let's add a new cycle. But this time, instead of looking through all of the elements from the group, we will look through the list of elements which were saved in the file. For that we will need another puzzle in list get sublist from. As the name states, it creates another sublist from already existing list. So it will not take the whole list or the elements, but only the elements that we will tell it to take. Extra elements list starts from the index 7. Because index 6 is reserved by blue color channel, and after that we have the list of our elements on a scene. Now here we need to select last. That is because we don't know how much elements are there in a list. We can have from 3 up to 5. So this sublist will load into the k variable, and then we will show it. So we will be showing only the elements that are present in this list, using the k variable. So on each cycle, the k variable will get one element from this list, and then we will show it. And before that, we need to hide all the objects from the group table. So first we hide all the objects, then we read this list and reveal all the objects from it. Now we just need to add a procedure recalculates model items here to the end. So the info panel will also react when we load the configuration file. Let's save, go to the application, reload it, and let's load our previously saved configurations. The first configuration works perfectly, and the second is working perfectly as well. We have the color, the dimensions and the elements, both in the 3D scene and info panel. Alright, that's all, see you in the next tutorial.